Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Young. I am a pastor of a church, and I'm also a lecturer and program director at a seminary. A little later this week, the world is going to celebrate International Transgender Day of Visibility. It's an annual event that occurs on March 31st that's dedicated to celebrating transgender people and raising awareness of discrimination faced by transgender people around the world. It's also a celebration of their contribution to society. Now, I have to begin by saying I am by no means an expert on this topic. So tonight, I hope that you will be patient with me as I, along with you, listen, learn, and hopefully find out how to love better. I met Jennifer a little over a decade ago when I was a senior pastor of a church in which Jennifer was serving. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves or too far ahead of the story. And so that I hope that you will join me tonight by welcoming Jennifer.
Hello.
Good evening. How are you?
I am good. I'm fantastic. We haven't talked in a very long time.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that is good or bad. If it's bad, I'm sorry for that. But I have been kind of following the journey for quite a while.
Yes.
One of the things that I hoped, along the journey was to be a positive voice from a person of faith as you have kind of navigated this journey. And I admit there have been moments, of this whole conversation that I just haven't understood. And
sure.
From a faith perspective as well, I have, over the years moved and changed. And a lot of the things that I find that we wrestle with culturally and from faith are things that I have to regularly just kind of say, what do I think about this? Where do I think God is in this? How do I reconcile the people that I know with the God that I know? And the one thing that I have, though, been consistent on for a very long time is people have to always come first. And I hope that is something that I modeled. And that's part of kind of why I wanted to do this tonight, was to learn how to be better and how to do better.
Okay. All right.
So, Jen?
Yes.
I guess, the first thing that I thought that I just kind of wanted to hear your story in whatever way you want to tell it. That's a really open-ended question. I don't even know
where very open-ended. Wow.
Where you begin it. Yeah. A little bit about yourself, your story, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. So where to begin? Where does the whole journey begin? It's different for everyone that's transgender, of course, or non-binary, or, whatever you came out as, maybe, gay, lesbian, whatever. But for me, the first time I really started to question things, I guess we'll begin it there. I was about 12, 13 years old. So this would have been the mid 80s, and a very different time than now, of course. And I guess I'll call it my first experience, so to speak. And it's not like I had ever thought about these things. I know there's some people I'm acquainted with, they said from age 3, 4, they knew right away. That wasn't the case for me, but it was right around puberty. And for some inexplicable reason, no one was home. My parents were gone. My brother was gone. And that was when I actually tried on something of Mom's. She just had some clothing laying out, and it was an interesting experience. It was about 1,000 different emotions all at one time. It was comforting, soothing, yet also very scary, thinking, okay, what does all of this mean? And I didn't know what to do with it, because, this is like I said, we're talking mid 80s. There's no resources. There's no nothing. There's no internet. You can't look anything up. And the only time you see something in the news, it's very sensationalized. And so you just figure, okay, there's something wrong with me. What the hell is wrong with me? And so that was the beginning. And then I'm thinking, okay, number one, nobody can ever know that this happened. Like that was one of the first thoughts once I
So
got
there was
past
no, like there
the
was
initial
no safe
euphoria.
space.
No, because I mean, societally, and it's nothing even against my parents, which we'll get to later, which has actually been a very positive experience. But at that moment in the mid 80s, I'm thinking there's no way, absolutely no way anyone could ever know about this. There's something wrong with me. I'm just, yeah. And so things stayed buried for a long time at that point, all throughout my teen years then. When no one would be around, I might try something on, and that would be it. But I'd have to carefully put everything back.
So do you regret that there was no one to have a conversation with, no one to, or have you kind of reconciled that this is a part of who I am, and I mean, how do you balance?
Yeah, I guess that's where I am now. It's that it is what it is. I hate to put it in those terms, but there wasn't any one person to blame for anything. It's just that it wasn't the right time, at least not for me and for a lot of people, because, oh my gosh, I know so many that are around my age that finally, as society became at least a little friendlier to this, and while the internet was a big part of that, of course, you could find like-minded people. I was very alone in that. And so I just tried to bury it. I just totally buried the emotions. Got little moments when I could, and just that was it.
So were you successful at burying it?
It's always a short-term thing. So successful in a way. Like I said, short-term. I wasn't caught, so I never had to do any explaining. But I don't know that was good. Maybe it would have been better to have been caught, but maybe it wouldn't have, because
I don't know.
It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. And I'm thinking, what if I could go back and talk to my 13-year-old self? What would I say? I probably would. It sounds bad, but I wouldn't advise them to tell anyone. I would probably say, well, hang in there. Your time will come. It's just not now. Like, just hang in there. It'll get better.
Would your advice be different today if you were 13 years old in 2022 rather than in
Oh, yeah.
80 something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it wasn't like
So
85,
today,
84. Yeah, if it was 2022, oh yeah, very different. Yeah. Yeah, certainly.
so whenever I met you,
Yes.
you were married.
Yes, I was.
And so I remember a very different Jennifer.
I know. Yes. I was your namesake. Yes, you remember Kevin.
Yeah, I'm absolutely terrified I'm going to actually call you the old name.
I know.
Because it
That's
is.
why it's almost
It's a
kind
name
of
that's
weird
near and dear
talking
to
to
my heart.
somebody who's named Kevin. I'm like, okay, that's kind of.
So, but were you raised? You were in a church. So were you raised in a church whenever you were 13? Were you in a church?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I was raised. So for the first however many years of my life, probably all through college age, it was a Methodist church. So it was probably technically what people would think of even as evangelical, but it was probably more, we'll say, middle of terms of by today's standards. Not super right wing, not super left wing, but still overall that day and age. I mean, everything was conservative by today's standards.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say, I think, whenever we were in each other's presence there, about a decade ago in that church, it was not a safe space. It would not have been a safe space to even have this conversation. There were there were several conversations,
No.
that I had with people who were a part of that church who were gay, but were not out
Okay.
at that time, and
Right.
had some issues with some interactions in that congregation. And I don't want to be, I don't want to say that church or that congregation was wrong or was bad. Everybody can make their own decision. But I think even 10 years ago,
Absolutely.
there weren't a lot of churches where there was safe space, and I think there are more so now. But I still don't know that I consider
Oh yeah.
the church world to be safe space in general yet for this kind of dialogue, and certainly for individuals who are not normative, whatever normative is, but normative in the
Right.
eyes of the church, which is
Yes.
singular, which is heterosexual, a very binary normative.
Oh, most definitely.
So, yeah. Well, how did you then, from being married,
Yes.
being male, make that decision and that journey to say, I guess the way I would put it is, maybe you would put it different. Correct me. I'm going to live who I am.
Right. Right. No, that's a good way of putting it. So we almost have to take it back before that. So my story, as far as, so I got through college and I was married before, and it was an issue with that marriage. Now, still a different day and age, but at least we were in the 90s, started to change things. And at that point, I probably considered myself a crossdresser and was trying to work through a lot of that. Problems, of course, with the marriage I was in at the time. So we did get divorced, but I was seeking counseling and all that. And going to a quote unquote Christian counselor, then I know she meant well, but I feel like I was led in the wrong direction. Wrong meaning, I think it delayed what eventually was going to happen anyway. And so rather than really talking through some of these gender identity issues, I was thoroughly convinced, okay, this is wrong, this is bad, I can't do this, this is not what God wants. And so I got rid of everything. And this is a lot of people who are cross-dressers or trans throughout their life, before they finally came to terms with things, there's a lot of purging that happens with clothing. This is not uncommon. And so I got rid of everything. I'm like, okay, this is in the past. I'm on the straight and narrow now. This is what God wants. Like, this is wrong. And so I'm thinking, okay, so I found a new church to go to, a little more conservative. And then, I start dating, and then will help me is to find a situation where I can't do it, where even if I'm tempted, I won't do it. So yeah, obviously long term, that was not a bad or not a good strategy. It didn't work out, but at the time that was my thinking back, 20 years ago now. And so then I tried to bury it. I'm thinking, no, it's wrong. I can't do this stuff. And so then I was able to bury it. Partly I was distracted. I got married, we had a kid, and from having kids, that could be like a distraction as well. And so then it took my mind off of some things, but it came back. Like, it never went totally away. I was able to not act on anything, but I remember I've remarked to people, I said, strangely though, our subconscious though knows things that we don't always know. And so I would have a lot of dreams at night, as like this. But so even when I was totally denying everything, obviously it was still there. And then it finally, by 20, I know it was, wow, oh my God. Yeah. 14 years of kind of burying it. And then I just couldn't anymore. And then I did some, then I kind of, I'll call
Well, it seems like we have lost you, Jennifer. We'll give you just a moment to get back with us. There, we've got you now.
Oh, you got me now.
All right, you're
Okay.
back.
All right. Yeah, I saw something showed up, it looked like. But yeah, so throughout all of 2017, I was very secretive about things. And then eventually getting, we'll say, caught. And so that kind of started the ball rolling of more therapy, and then having some difficult conversations with my wife at the time. Oh, here comes the cat. Yeah. He joins me, so just so you know, a little aside. So whenever I video, he always, here, I'm gonna put him down. Get down, buddy. There you go. But difficult conversations, and then that was late 2017, early 2018. And
so spiritual community, was there any spiritual support through that, or were you just completely alone from a spiritual side of things, or a church family?
Yeah, at that point, so I'm trying to think. So at that point, we were still going to church some, not all the time. Sometimes we would watch something on TV. So I was fairly isolated. So I didn't have a lot of friends at the time. I realized the only people I talked to besides coworkers was my wife and child. I was very
wow,
I didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't have a lot of oh, I did pause again.
No, you're good.
I didn't have a lot of confidence anyway that anyone that we went to church with would like, oh no, yeah, this would be frowned upon.
Did you have any support network though, anywhere, or were you still alone?
Pretty alone. I mean, and it's not really till I started counseling, and it wasn't someone I knew. I mean, it was just a counselor. And fortunately, she was I like to think of her as one of the kind of local experts in the Cleveland area. And she had been doing this for 25 years with transgender clients. So I didn't have to educate.
Yeah, you didn't have to educate her then.
She wasn't someone, some people worry about, people like steer you with something. Not at all. In fact, I remember her even saying right off the bat, she said, not everyone that comes in here that thinks really are gender. And because sometimes
it's a really
you have
interesting
to think
point,
of
actually, Jen, because I hear that a lot, is that it's the community, it's the world, it's the media, it's the counselor who are kind of pushing individuals in a direction. But you didn't experience that.
No, I was able to go at my pace and figure it out. I said, you fill out a little profile, and this is my experience. And she had resources, and it was to help me figure it out, not to tell me what I am, for me to discover what I am, one way or the other. And so I had a lot of confidence in her. I could tell within the first 5 minutes into another counselor before, and I had to educate him, and it was terrible. Yeah. He was a very nice person. He was probably great in other things, but he didn't know that, so he couldn't help me.
Having been to my fair share of therapists, I can tell you that the difference between a good one and a bad one is all the difference in the world. So you said,
Oh, it is. Oh my.
you said a little earlier that you had no self-confidence. And then I heard you say about this counselor when you found her that she had confidence. You noticed her confidence in the topic. When did you, or maybe have you, but when did you find your own self-confidence? Because you seem very
My,
self-confident now, but talk to me
yeah.
about self-confidence.
Yeah, that took a long time because, of course, my ultimate low point was probably in that early 2018 when it was that really an existential crisis in terms of, wow, it's like you grow up in the church, you're expected to do certain things based on your gender, and now you realize this differs from what all these things you've been told, and just society too. And thinking, oh my gosh. So I'm like at this ultimate low point of really it's a live or die moment. I mean, it's not to over dramatize it, but it kind of was. And once I eventually did get past that, deciding that, well, no, I need to figure out, mostly for my kid, I need to figure out a way through this. Whatever it is, I have to figure this out. And so I went from the lowest of lows. Now, I still have my own insecurities, as we all do, but it was just a long process of accepting myself, just getting used to my new life too, talking to other people like me. See, that's the thing is when you're alone, it's hard to have that self-confidence and being able to not just have the counseling, but she was able to get me in touch or point me in the direction of some support groups, things like that, that I'm thinking, oh, it's not just me. There's others like me.
That
And be able to share my story, hear their story.
for somebody who did not have safe space or a community or any idea that other people was wrestling with these things, to be able to find other people who are asking the same questions, walking the same road, and on the same
Right.
and on a similar journey. I can't even begin to. I don't know that I can begin to know what that has to feel like.
Yeah, I mean, just going to even that first support group, and I was really in a bad way. It was really probably a few weeks removed from that low point, and just being able to hear their stories too was everything in a way. To suddenly not be alone, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard to explain because even though I still didn't feel that great, I knew, okay, there's hope. There was like something to cling to at that point.
What do you wish? What do you wish would have been different along your journey?
Along my journey, I don't know. In some ways, I almost wonder what would have been like to have been born during a different time, because although in some ways I grew up, 70s, 80s, Generation X and all that in some ways, but not so good in other ways. So anyone that, if you differed a little bit, so really anyone within the LGBTQ community, it was a challenge. And really, I admire anyone that came out during that time, because I certainly didn't have the courage to. Because I know some people did come out, and that's something I never could have done back then. So I don't know. I guess I've made my peace with a lot of that. It wasn't to be. Maybe it just wasn't my time. Maybe this is when I was supposed to come out, when I was ready.
How has how does God now play into your life, if at all? I guess I should say, if I had walked through the journey that you've walked through. If I have walked through a journey that anybody really on the LGBTQI plus spectrum had walked through, through the 80s, through the 90s, through the even today, in a lot of ways, I don't know that I'd want to have anything to do with faith, God, religion, spirituality. I don't know that I would. So, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
what's your...
No, not at all. I admit I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with, not so much with God, but with the church.
Oh, well, I do too.
Yeah, and so it's
sometimes it's
I'm
more
often,
hate, sometimes it's more love, but
yeah, I admit it's, and I've tried to separate how I feel about the faith and the people. Sometimes people, like, I grew up in the church, so it's a little different. I can understand those that didn't grow up in the church, especially, in the LGBTQ community, why they would want nothing. I totally understand that, because what they see, at least publicly, is kind of a turnoff. Largely, doesn't mean everybody, everyone is Christian, but what they see in the news, what becomes public. I grew up in it, so I had a little different viewpoint. I really tried to separate, okay, what's my faith compared to how I see some of the practitioners. So it's like separating I was thinking of a sports analogy for those that prefer that. Rooting for a team and liking their fans, right? The fans are one thing that's different from liking the team itself. So it's like, okay, what's my faith? Whether or not I like some other Christians is beside the point, in a sense. So I've had to separate those two.
That's really mature, honestly. Wow. I'm really sorry, honestly, that the church has not been a safe place for you and a lot of people. I regret that. I regret the role, honestly, that I played in that over the years. Perhaps it's part of the reason why I'm so passionate now to learn, to change, to understand.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
I could not have grown up in a more fundamentalist church or situation, and so part of the journey for
Right.
me has been understanding what the Bible really says, without without what is in my mind sacrificing what the Bible says. I and that was like a 10-year
Oh,
process for
yeah.
me, kind of educating myself enough to deprogram the misinformation in order to understand
Yes.
whatever the new information was. And my hope and my prayer was that it would allow love and support and affirmation of people who are however anyone identifies. But as I began the
Right.
journey, I wasn't really sure where it would end. I hoped that, and I'm thankful that it did. But I guess a little, and I don't want to necessarily compare, but a little like, I guess, you going into the counseling situation that was positive, where it was just the person who was there kind of guiding you on your journey, but you were the one making the journey. A little, I guess, similarly faith wise. I just regret that it didn't happen 10 or 15 or 20 years earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I guess things happen when they happen, but and really the thing is, I have been to some places, and I've been to Old South Church. I haven't been there in a little while, but it did give me a great experience. I was able to meet people of faith that did accept me for who I am without judgment, and so that did help. That was a part of the journey too, where that helped in me being able to separate sometimes the faith from the people. That there's so many different versions of Christianity out there that, especially for those that didn't grow up in it, it's hard for them to know the difference, because they say Christian, but oh my gosh, that can mean about 1,000 different things. And I've met
Yeah, I just I agree. There are a lot of versions, and everybody thinks they're right, or everybody likes to think that they're right. Give you a minute just for the video feed to catch back up. There you go.
All right.
So I am certain probably that you unfortunately encounter people who don't understand, or worse, absolutely vehemently disagree with what they probably see or characterize as a choice.
Right.
I can't fully understand or fathom, especially when it comes from people or faith, or comes from a foundation of religion. I don't. What do you block those people? Do you try to have a conversation and educate? Like, are you sick and tired of it? What I mean, I would think I would be angry. I'm certain that you are much more centered
Well,
and emotionally healthy, probably than I am. But
yeah.
I, what I don't even know what I'm asking, but I know that people are miserable, sometimes
Yeah.
accidentally, and sometimes people are miserable intentionally. And how does that feel? What do you do with that
Yeah.
hate? Because there is still so much
I think maybe
hate.
there is. And I think I try to gauge when I'm dealing with individuals that some I realize they're never gonna hear anything. They just want to say what they want to say. And those people I just try to just block out, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm wasting my energy. It's just like anytime there's a troll on, whether it's my Instagram, Facebook, or something, I ignore it. I'm thinking the trolls aren't worth even dealing with. Occasionally there's people that want to know more. They're maybe not supportive exactly, but they're not adversarial. And those people, to convince them of anything, I just try to air my story. And maybe that's why for a long time, especially right after I came out, I would post all the time, literally, of some, this is my experience and this is what I go through. Sometimes it's very normal, some out of the ordinary, but just sharing my experiences, I thought would be the best tool for those that are a little more, that just don't know about it.
Do you ever get tired of being simply thought of as trans and nothing more?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Because I mean,
Especially now that
know
I'm a
that
few
I know
years
that you
into
have a lot
this.
of other gifts and a lot of other facets to who you are, but so often I feel like
Right.
culture, and especially the church, only sees people through a lens of sexual identity or gender, and nothing more.
Yes.
And you're, thankfully, thank you for being willing to come and just have a conversation about this part of who you are. But you're so much more than
All
that.
right.
Um, what parts of you don't people see that you wish they saw?
I guess that's fine. What I try to share more now on social media is just me, the person, that it's just one aspect of myself. Just like you might be a pastor or you're heterosexual or male, but that's not everything about you. That's just an aspect. It's not who you are as a person. And so I have all these other things. And now that I'm further along, because I'm 3+, probably almost 4 years into this, even I can focus on other things now. Honestly, I stepped away from my music that whole time. In
Really?
fact, I thought I would never come back to it, actually.
Really? You know,
But
y'all may not know this, but Jen is a very, very gifted and talented musician.
thank you. And in fact, that's why I was really excited, because of course this last week that was the first music I released, like the first project I finished since it was late 2016. By the time we hit 2017, I was already wrestling with these issues, and I didn't complete any project since then. And it was weird picking it up at first, my music, and then it was almost like I had never stopped. There was just a 5-year pause in between. But now I feel like I can think about other things. And that's the thing too, like transitioning isn't meant to be a permanent process. It's like, okay, when you get to a certain point, it's different for everybody. Could be 2 years, 10 years, whatever it is. It's nice to get to that point where, okay, fine, I could just live my life. And that's what I try to just do, is live my life. And that's really all I want to do. I don't want to be hassled by people. I just want to live my life. I'm not ripping apart the fabric of society by just being me.
So is it, and I'm just listening to what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn, and it
Yes.
sounds like rather than being known as a trans individual, preferably you would just simply be known as Jennifer, a woman. Is that true?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I know it's different for those that knew me before. I get that. But the nice thing is, anyone that's met me since about 2018 never knew the old person. So they don't even, in fact, it's weird for them to even think about anything before.
Interesting.
And even
Yeah.
very diverse, accepting of things. In fact, that's one area, just, an aside here, because the coming out process is the anxiety that for anybody that's coming out, no matter what you're coming out as, there's a lot of anxiety. And the one thing that went so smoothly, it was almost scary, was coming out of work. And it was like a big nothing almost.
Really?
I came, it was for a day or two, and then we all moved on. And that's all I wanted, because I didn't want a big parade, but I didn't want to be excluded or be pariah either. And I just wanted to keep business as usual. And that's what. So yeah, it was great. That's exactly what I wanted. I just wanted to continue on as, business as usual.
I wish that were the story that churches wrote. that people, no matter who they are, what they are, where they are, could show up, even if there's a change, and they would be fully accepted, and everything would move on like nothing had happened.
Right. And I didn't mind questions. I figured, okay, people have questions. That's no big deal. But yeah.
What do you think are important questions that you think should be answered? Things that you're like, if there is this question or this topic or this thing, I really wish that people who I interacted with every day knew this. What are some of those things that you think are important to understand?
I'm trying to think. Well, because now I am at we'll say, a greater degree of confidence. Like I said, I have my own insecurities and all that. Fortunately, I've gotten past a lot of the gender dysphoria. There's always small amounts here and there. But I think a lot of people don't always realize just, wow, how much, there's just a lot of anxiety. Because when you wake up in the morning and you get dressed and you have to go to the store, like any normal activity, typical activity, you don't even have to give it a second thought. We have to overthink, or I don't know if we have to, but we do. We tend to, a lot of us overthink a lot of things because we have to plan for things. We're thinking, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I don't worry about that so much now, but I did for a while. Now I don't, I just don't care. But that's part of the confidence. It's like either they'll know I'm trans or they won't. I don't care. I really don't care anymore. And it's great to get to that point, but not everyone always does too. And I will say this, the most stressful piece was the coming out. The actual transition itself is much easier,
Really?
medically, physically, emotionally, surgically, was easier than the coming out for me anyway, because I had to have a lot of very tough conversations with people. And it's knowing that being who you are, maybe this is one thing, knowing that being who you are, there's many relationships that will be permanently altered in a very negative way. I knew that's partly what I struggled with. So also for the church community is like having grown up in there, I remember thinking, back in late 2017, early 2018, I was grappling with, okay, can I trans and still be Christian? If I can, miserable just so I can be Christian. And
Wait. So
knowing that
you would
also,
have
if I come out, okay,
you would have not you would not have
I
transitioned
might not have.
if you
I
had
might
not
not
gotten
have. I
to a
might have
place
just,
where, wow.
yeah, I might have just tried to bury it. It wouldn't have gone very well, but
Wow.
yeah.
So it was that I I'm sorry, Jen, I'm shocked by that.
That's what I mean. It's an existential crisis in a way that
Yeah.
I'm going like, well, am I going to go to hell if I do this? And I think there's so much, especially, having been in the evangelical church, it's not to rip on them. I'm just saying that was, a lot of my recent experience is that there's a lot of focus on, I have to check these boxes, to go to heaven and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And if I don't do these things, if I do this, it's like, okay, it doesn't matter, that's a ticket to hell, basically.
Yeah. Well, the reason
So,
I'm shocked by it,
and all
Jennifer,
this, it's toxic, like
yeah.
some of this that they put on people. And this is why people commit suicide. This is why, like, church people, that they can't, they know that they're going to be excluded from things. They're going to be, I don't say kicked out. It'll be more passive aggressive than that. They won't tell you to go. They'll just ignore you. But
Well, see, that's why I think I'm so shocked, is because one of the storylines oftentimes that I hear is that people transition or become gay or choose one of these identities for list the reasons, to be a better swimmer, to get a better job, because there's social pressure from the outside, because they're confused. But what I've heard in your story is, and I was thinking, the reason, the counter argument to that is you don't understand the surgery, the journey of counseling, the that side of things. No one's going to go through the process of what it takes to physically transition just to be a better swimmer, or because there's social pressure, or because the counselor told them to. But what I heard you say was it wasn't even those things that really were the gut check for you, but it was the coming out. It was the relationships, the conversations with those whom you loved or respected or had some sort of power over you. And it was, God, you have just blown my mind, because I would never have thought that it would be those two things that would be the largest hurdle to who you are now. And
oh wait,
yeah, there you are. Well, and I should say being who you always were. I guess I
back.
should. Put it that way. I've got you now. I'm mind blown by that, Jen. Give it just a second here. We'll catch up. Yeah, so just to reiterate, having a conversation with Jennifer on this International Week of Transgender Visibility, and Jen has very graciously been willing to come and share part of her story, and I believe we're back.
There it goes.
There you are.
I thought I'd leave and come back. I'm thinking, oh, it paused right at a bad time.
It's all right. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm shocked that was a list of things that were the hurdles for you,
right?
And were the crisis points for you. I don't even know what to do with that information, because I'm just I would not have guessed.
Yeah, that was really it. And knowing that, yeah, I knew a lot of. It's weird knowing that, okay, if I do this, there's certain people that'll never be in my life again. And there's sacrifices. It's weird to know that, okay, if I make this decision, I mean, in some ways, they talk about choice, like it's not a choice to be transgender, but at the end of the day, you still have to make a choice. Am I going to transition? What do I do with it? That's where the choice is. And even just the coming out itself was enough to destroy several relationships. Yeah. But strangely, I was able to become closer with some other people. So, there was a little give and take there. And a few people did surprise me in a positive way. Although most people reacted exactly as I expected them to.
Really?
For good or bad. Some, yeah. And, I'm happy to report one of the wild cards, I have to admit, one of the big wild cards was my parents. I'm thinking, okay, they're hoping to ride off into the sunset. They're 70 years old or whatever they were at the time, early 70s. I'm thinking, wow, I'm dropping this bombshell on them. But they've been really amazingly supportive, which I can't tell you how much that helped.
What do you attribute that to? Why were you wrong?
I wasn't so much wrong. It's like I think of them as the wild card. I didn't know how they would respond. Everyone else I was able to predict, but I'm thinking, wow, I don't know. They've always been supportive in the past, so I was hoping, but I didn't know. And then my daughter's been amazing too, so that's been great. So I had the three closest people, fortunately, and that really helped the whole thing. And other people, yeah, some other families been hit and miss, but that's par for the course. I know people that have had far worse experiences than me. I have had those that have had better, so I figure I'm somewhere in the middle in terms of overall reaction.
You seem happy.
I am now. Yeah. It took a while to get here.
So you're glad you made the decision.
Yes. Yeah. It's weird not living with a secret now. When you go your whole life having to keep people a little bit at arm's length, you can kind of get sort of close, but there's always that little bit you have to hide. But not having to hide now it took a while to get used to that, thinking, wait, I don't have to hide anything. I have no big secrets. Everyone has little things, but I have no big secrets now about who I am. Thinking, oh, wait, this is how normal people live. Not having secrets. Wow.
I can't imagine the weight that has to be lifted.
Yeah.
To be able to live like normal people live, where who you are on the outside
Yeah.
matches what you feel on the inside. Something that most people seemingly,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say most, a lot of people don't have to deal with. And so, just even understanding that, I think is an important point, that those of us whose how we feel on the inside matches what's on the outside. I think that's an important point to think about,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
it feels like when
Yeah.
that doesn't. So if I can ask, Jen,
Right.
you said that you were able to reconcile it with
Sure.
God, and that was part of the release for you, uh, to feel freedom, to allow that weight to be taken off. How did you
Yes.
get there? How did you get there? What was it for you that allowed that day to come?
Part of it was, since I didn't necessarily have some people around me to bounce things off of in terms of that had, I won't say expertise, but I mean, I remember I read several books on things, and it's not just the books, but it gets you thinking anyway. It gets the thought process going, and I want to say some other ways of looking at the gospel, because sometimes we get a very myopic view, whether it's not just evangelicals, but any of the other denominations. Say they get very focused on how they believe, but getting other perspectives on what some of the what the gospel really says, and maybe getting more context behind some of those verses that are used really as a weapon against people like me, and things that, yeah, just being able to dive in at an intellectual level as well as just spiritual, just thinking, oh, okay. I feel like a lot of people don't really, like, context doesn't mean anything within the Bible. They see what it says, and they just like, this is what my pastor said, this is what my denomination says. And what was it? I've joked with my daughter. I said a lot of the doctrine from some denominations, they really we boiled it down to 4 words, gay bad because Leviticus. So they just point to a couple verses and say, this is bad, you're going to hell, and that's it. They try to sugarcoat it a little bit, but it's pretty much it. They don't care about context, they don't care about anything else.
They don't care
Yeah,
about the 10 verses before it or the 10 verses after it.
exactly. It's not to excuse things, but really, there's like, and I'm hardly a biblical scholar, but uh, still, it does matter. There was a reason behind all the writings, all the scripture, Old and New Testament. And I'm just amazed that so much time sometimes is dedicated, or so much space doctrinally for some of these churches, for like very small passages that they make huge. Yeah, it becomes a huge part of their church when it's 2 verses in a whole Bible or something. I don't know. Once
Yeah, and
again, my perspective, but
usually
yeah,
there are 10 verses that disagree with those 2 verses, but we're going to
I
ignore
know.
those.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah.
So, um, how can someone like me be a better ally?
Well, maybe even doing things like this, which are just very candid conversations. Because I feel like some people really just, not just me, but all of us within the LGBTQ community, that a lot of times people that have something against us for whatever reason don't even really know us, have never talked to us. They just see what they see in the news. and they don't know us at a personal level. Those that tend to know somebody who is gay or trans or non-binary or whatever tend to be more understanding. And it's these conversations being open. I think both sides have to be open. I've not been perfect in this whole process, so I've made my share of missteps in dealing with people too. So it's not like they're all bad and I was perfect in coming out and doing this. I've done a lot of things wrong too along the way, but being able to maintain the dialogue, that's where I don't know. I think that's a good thing. So this kind of thing, and that's why I wanted to participate in the first place. I'm thinking, okay, it's outside of my comfort zone, but sometimes we have to do that. Being an introvert kind of a lot of the time, that I like to be very prepared, have, prepared speech for things. I'm thinking, okay, this will be a Q&A, so this will be an adventure. But I thought it was important. I thought it was good. So I wanted to do it.
I want to applaud and reinforce your bravery and your courage for doing this. First of all, talking about oneself is never easy. As you said, having an open-ended dialogue, especially something about that goes as deep to the heart of a person as identity, is doubly hard. And then doing it with me, a pastor, I'm also told I'm intimidating. I don't know if it's the baldness or what, but is thirdly, so but what would you say to somebody who maybe has listened to all of this and said, I don't agree with that. I disagree. I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with that. What do you say?
Wow. I don't know. I guess I just like to talk to them, not to convince them of something, but to just ask me questions, and I'd give them honest answers. I could just share my experience. Life experience for me, it's like when I hear people's stories, that ends up being more impactful for me than when they're trying to convince me of something. They're saying, okay, this is what I've gone through. This is what I've experienced. And maybe it won't get through. Not everyone's going to be okay with me. That's okay. I've long since made peace with that. I mean, in a sense, that happens to everybody, but for me, it's for some very specific reasons.
So, if somebody says, I want to be an ally, I want to do better, I want to learn more, but this is something that I'm trying to understand, and I'm not fully there, but I want to be, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I don't know someone who is LGBTQI, or specifically, maybe I don't know somebody who has transitioned or who is in the process of transitioning.
Right.
But they say, I may not feel comfortable having a conversation with you, Jen, but tell me, what's the most important thing that you think I should walk away from this conversation? What is it that you would say, this is the most important thing that you should remember as you consider this topic?
I mean, in a sense, we're regular people like anybody else. We get viewed or grouped into these things, but we have the same hopes, desires. We want to take care of our family. We want to go to work, be productive. Some of us are people of faith. We want to be able to just do that. We want to really do everything that everyone else does. There's nothing really that different. We just went through the trans experience. So it was just something a little bit different in that way, but we all have the same hopes and dreams. And no one has to really talk to us differently. They could just talk to us as they would anybody else. I mean, in some ways, I'm the same person I was before. I'm not, but I am. And, I'm a little more fabulous, of course, but sorry. No, just
Why are you apologizing?
no, I'm injecting humor into it, but yeah. But really, we are just like everybody else, and we get put in this other category, and we're not. We
So you
want
mentioned,
what everyone else wants, to be loved, to take care of our families. Yeah.
and to be left alone.
Sometimes to be left alone. Well, in other words, like you don't get bothered. No one's ever going to bother you going to the store. We sometimes have to worry about that depending on where we are. And yeah,
Yeah, I mentioned safe space earlier, and I think it's so
right,
important to create safe space for other people,
right.
just period, and in general. You mentioned gender dysphoria. I heard the
Yes.
other day somebody use the term gender euphoria,
Oh,
and
yeah.
as I was listening to you talk, the thought dawned on me that I hope for you, my prayer for you is uh, a lifetime of gender euphoria. And I just kind of wondered, like
Yes.
5, 10 years, like what do you hope the future looks like for you specifically down the road? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? You're living a freedom that you've never lived for
Yeah.
most of your life.
I
What
know.
are you going to do with that freedom? What do you hope for?
Yeah. Wow, that's open-ended. Yeah. In a way, I'm already starting to get there anyway. That now I can, rather than just focusing on transitioning or some very transition related things, it's not that I don't want to do some other things, but I can focus on other things in my life, doing more music, uh, making more friends, watching my daughter grow up and all that. She's 16 now, and so that's kind of fun watching her get close to adulthood now. It's kind of fun, and you know, romantic relationships, things like that too. I'll stay somewhat vague on that, but yes, exploring those and just like I said, what anyone else wants. Because I am feeling that in many ways, most days, it is more gender euphoria than dysphoria. Like I said, I have my insecurities, but mostly they don't control me the way they did before. So yeah,
I
I'm
uh,
very optimistic, and yeah, I feel good about just the possibilities out there.
I believe that everybody deserves to be loved and to have the opportunity to give love. And I hope you experience both of those
Yes,
as well. I hope you're
yes.
receiving both, but long term, that's my hope. That's my prayer for you. Two questions.
Two
Uh,
questions.
okay, and then I'm done. And
All
and
right.
the first one is, and I probably should have warned you I was going to ask this, so it's okay if
Oh,
not.
okay.
Uh, do you have any questions for me? It doesn't seem fair for me to spend an hour
I
grilling you
know.
without
Wow.
any opportunity for you to ask me anything. And so there probably isn't, because I didn't put it in your mind. But is there anything that you want to ask me?
I don't know that there's anything that comes right off the bat.
Okay.
I may have to message you if I
If so,
no.
feel free.
Nothing yet.
So, my last question, and you kind of answer this a little bit, is if somebody wants to educate themselves more, I think I heard you say, have a conversation with somebody else, who is
Yes.
around you. Statistically, this is not a rare or unique circumstance,
No.
especially on the LGBTQI uh, identity, but on the T part, transgender as well is not
Right.
it's not rare statistically. Any other advice in addition to talking to someone who may be in that process or who has transitioned?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, depending on where you live or who you're around, maybe you're not going to know somebody personally. So there's always plenty of groups. There's lots of things that you can look up. Heck, there's probably some books, although I don't have anything specific to recommend. But I mean, I do know there's a lot of LGBT groups around, maybe even within, like, especially anyone that works for a large employer. Often there's groups within there. I work at Progressive. We have an employee group that is we have it for a number of different types of folks, no matter what, but one of them is an LGBTQ, and that's a great way to get involved too. You don't have to be gay or trans in order to join it. Anybody can join it. And it's a great way to just meet people and learn about it a little bit more.
I want to thank you for being transparent and being brave again in your journey. And I also want to say, if anybody is listening who is not in safe space or who needs safe space, I want to give you the freedom to reach out to me and let me do whatever I can to help you find safe space or find resources to help you, whether it's connecting with other people, books, whatever. If you are in a place where your family or your church is not yet safe space, I'm sorry, but I hope that you are able to find hope like Jen has. And I hope that it doesn't take, as long as it does sometimes us as Gen Xers,
Yeah.
to get there. I hope that our kids grow up in a world that is markedly different and allowing them to explore openly and
Yeah.
be who they are publicly.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jen, I feel compelled to pray this prayer over you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God's face radiate with joy because of you and bring you peace. Thanks so much for doing this tonight. I really, really, really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you. I was happy to be a part of this.
Thanks. God bless. We'll see
All
you
right.
soon.
Yep. All righty.